Hi, today we are going to be looking at binomials. Now, binomials means two numbers, and we have been starting off by looking at squares of numbers. And we know from our work with area that a square means the base and the height have the same number, and it makes an actual shape of a square. And we also practiced with looking at the value of different squares of numbers. Today we're going to be looking just at this 10 square. And I know that the base is 10 and the height is 10. So I know that there's 100 beads in here. So 10 squared equals 100. But I can use these rubber bands to find some other squares and rectangles inside of this number. To do this, I take one rubber band. I'm going to separate it. So instead of 10, what it's really saying is 2 plus 8. And 2 plus 8 is the same thing as 10. So we haven't really changed anything. We've just put it into two numbers. And I will do the same here, and I will then come down and do the same over here. So this is my binomial. I could call this 10 squared, but I can also call it 2 plus 8 squared. And now I can see that I have two squares and two rectangles. So this is one square, this is another square, and then these are my two rectangles. So let's look at what we can do with this on paper. So for this work, first you will build your binomial using the square and the rubber bands, and then you're going to draw the exact same thing with your binomial paper over here. You'll need a pencil and a ruler, and I'm going to draw lines exactly where my rubber bands are. So I'm going to come over 2, and I'm going to come down 2. So I could say 10 squared, or I could say 2 plus 8 squared. So now what I want to do is label each of the parts on each of the sections. So this I know is 2 squared. I'll just write this right inside here. I could also write it off to the side over here. Now, 1, 2 is the height. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this rectangle is 2 times 8. I'll write that there. 2 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's the same. I will write this over here. And then the last one is this big square. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is 8 squared. Now that I have each of my sections written, all I have to do is, what I'm really doing is adding each of these pieces together. So I'll write it over here. 2 squared plus 2 times 8 plus 2 times 8 plus 8 squared. So all I've done was write out horizontally the equation, just adding each of these pieces together. Now the next step is I write the value of each number underneath of it. The best part about this work is if you don't have these memorized, you can just count the circles that are in there, or you can use your multiplication square. But I know that 2 squared is 4, 2 times 8 is 16, another 16, and then 64. So now I'm almost finished. What I need to do next is add all of these numbers up. If I get the number 100, I know that I've done all this correctly because I haven't removed anything. The 10 square is worth 100, so this should also be worth 100. When you line them up vertically, make sure that your units are lined up. Do you see how this one, it needs to be in the unit. If you accidentally put it in the tens row, it won't give you the right answer. So 4 plus 6 is 10, plus another 6 plus 4 is 10. So 10 plus 10 is 20. 2 plus 6 is 8, 9, 10. And look at that. We did get it correct. So let's take a look at another one. We'll move these over so that we can have 3 plus 7. And I know that 3 plus 7 equals 10. So 10 squared is the same thing as 3 plus 7 squared. We're just breaking it up into two numbers, or a binomial. So I've placed it here, and now I'm going to draw the same thing over here on my paper. I put my rubber bands and my lines in the same positions. There we are. Now this time I'll label it slightly differently so that you can see that if you don't like to put it on top of the circles, you can put it on the side. But the process is exactly the same. So this is 3 squared. I can just put it up here if that's what I prefer. 3 times 7. And I have another one over here, 3 times 7. And then this last square is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 squared. So this is just another way of writing exactly this, just if you prefer it to be to the side instead of right on top. But the process is the same. I'll write it over here. 3 squared plus 3 times 7 plus 3 times 7 plus 7 squared. Get in the habit of using these parentheses. That just means these two belong together. So 3 squared equals 9 plus 21 plus 21 plus 49. Well, this is one set of 10. This is another set of 10. 10 plus 10 is 20. 2 plus 4 is 6. 7, 8, 9, 10. And we got it correct. So we could say 10 squared equals 100, or we can say that 3 plus 7 squared equals 100. This 10 and this 3 plus 7, they mean the same thing. It's just a different way of writing it out. So the last one that we'll try, let's move it over to 4. You'll want to be careful that you double check your work, because if I leave it like this, it's a very common mistake. You're moving the rubber bands, maybe it's hard to count them. This wouldn't be correct, would it? Because this isn't a square. It has to be a square. This is at 4, but this one stayed at 3. So just make sure that you always double check that your rubber band is in the correct place, and when you draw it, make sure you draw them in the correct place. Otherwise it won't look right and the answer won't be correct. So here we have it. There we go. So I can tell this is a square of 4. 4 squared. This is 4 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And another 4 times 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This one is 6 squared. Okay, the next step, we'll write out the pieces. All right, now we put the value underneath. And let's add them all up. See if we get 100. That's a set of 10 and another set of 10. 10 plus 10 is 20. 2 plus 3 is 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So this is the very beginning intro step to learning about binomials. It's really important to practice this. Perhaps on your own you want to see what happens if you have 5 plus 5 squared. Also, the next lesson I'll introduce how to do this with squares besides 10 squared. You can use any square number to come up with new equations. So maybe challenge yourself, see if you can figure this one out. And that is the lesson on the intro to binomials.